You're listening to The Bold Blueprint with Claire Bartlett. This is the go-to podcast for business owners who are ready to be bold, step into your power and claim the success that you deserve. So whether you're an established business or just starting out, this podcast is your weekly dose of unapologetic inspiration, empowerment, and actionable advice to take your business to the next level. So whether it's the highs, the lows, or everything in between, I'm here to help you build a business that reflects who you truly are. It's time to break the mold and build a business that thrives on your terms. Today's episode is brought to you by Xero Accounting Software, a champion of small businesses and a proud sponsor of the Bold Blueprint podcast. Managing your business finances can feel overwhelming, but Xero simplifies it all and gives you the power to keep your books in order and your mind on growth. Xero have amazingly offered a 50% discount off your first 3 months with them. So if you'd like to take advantage of this amazing deal, just follow the link in the show notes. But for now, let's jump into this week's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Bold Blueprint. This week, I am joined by the gorgeous Holly Matthews, who's the founder of the Happy Me Project and a coach. And I'm so excited to have you here today, Holly, to speak about all things, internal and just finding that happy place.
Yeah.
So before we move on, do you want to just say hello, introduce yourself and tell us sort of how you got onto this journey?
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. And it's lovely to be in different spaces to get to chat about this stuff. I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with helping people to feel more happy and less crappy. Like, it is a driver in me. And if I take it back to, that's my door knocking already. We just said before this, didn't we? If it goes, it goes. And yeah, so I started off as a TV actress when I was 11 years old. I wrote a letter to this TV show called Biker Grove here in the UK. And I asked for a job and they got me in for an audition. And then I didn't get it. I didn't get that particular part. But then 6 months later, they wrote a part in for me and I started on that journey. So I started working really young and I was in a very adult environment, very young. But I loved it. I loved it. It was purpose and passion. And it's where I felt the most me that I could be. And I only ever thought I would do acting. Like, that was, again, I talk about obsession, but I think particularly neurodivergent people, and I'm ADHD, when you love something with somebody who's neurodivergent, we love it with all our being. And so when I say obsession, it is. And being an actress, that's all I would talk about. It's all I wanted to do. I was very, very driven from being a young age. After leaving Biker Grove, and I was on that for 7 years, I signed to Sony as a solo recording artist, and I did MTV and Top of the Pops and was recording music in Marbella and touring the UK and doing all of the Disney and Nickelodeon and all of that stuff. I then went to drama school and went back into acting, and it was all I ever thought I would do. In the background, though, I did work on my own self-development, and it was always something that for my own self that I did from being really young. And I asked a friend of mine who I was on Biker Grove with, one of the other actors, and I said, when I was writing my first book, I was reflecting on, did I always do this? Was I always into self-development? She was like, yeah, you were. Like, she was like, you'd be in the green room and everyone would be sitting around and you'd be giving us a speech about how life is not a dress rehearsal. And I was like, oh, okay, what a wanker. But I've always had this kind of a respect for life and a want to be happy. And that doesn't mean I've always felt that. And actually, in terms of growing up on TV, part of the reason why I started to seek out ways to feel happy was because I felt happy in what I was doing, but I felt I deeply disliked myself, especially the way I looked. And I was struggling with that. I was struggling with being this, what I perceived as this alien. Like, I felt like an alien in spaces outside of the acting world. And I would go to school and I felt like I was cosplaying as a real person. And I now understand that more, but that's purely from self-development. As I got older and I became a mum, I've got 2 daughters who you can loudly hear in the background now and then today on this podcast. And then in 2014, my husband Ross was diagnosed with brain cancer and then died of brain cancer in 2017. And those things shifted my trajectory. And I started to talk about the stuff that I had always done just for me to navigate being an actor and, bouncing around TV shows and acting jobs and trying to just do that for myself. And I started to talk about it when Ross was ill. And I found that people gravitated towards what I had to say. And I think that was probably twofold. One, I had learned it for a long time. Like, I'm knowledgeable in what I talk about without realizing I was knowledgeable, because it didn't come from a place of just going to school and learning this. It came from I need to do it, and actually like a love of it as well, and finding my own path with it, rather than just, this is the textbook look at what this should look like.
Yeah.
Was feeling it, and I was feeling it out, and I was trying it, and I was talking to friends about this stuff and getting them to, and then and people just gravitate. And I think also because of being an actor, I've obviously got a confidence in a way of delivering that probably landed in a way that people could hear it more. And I just moved from that space of acting where into a space of self-development. And when Ross died, the Happy Me project was born very quickly after he died. And it literally came from the fact that there was so many people eyes on what was happening. Ross's death was in every national newspaper. I was on Lorraine Kelly within a month of Ross dying, talking about it. So there was a lot of eyes on. And that then meant that a lot of people were messaging and going, how are you working yourself through this when I can't cope that the washing's up the wall and my kids are being assholes and I'm struggling with that? Like, and because I have a respect for life and I want people to live a life that feels good to them, I've wanted to find solutions and answers. And in that time, early doors grief, I wasn't really able to be coaching people one-on-one. So I put the Happy Me project together. It was an online self-study course, literally recorded on my phone at the bottom of my stairs with no microphone, scribblings on the back of an envelope of ideas of like 21-day course and 21 things I was doing that I knew would support people and would be simple and easy to implement straight away. Within a few months of that being out and seeing hundreds of people go through that course, I realized that simple self-development had a place, and me being able to condense the knowledge that I had into something that made sense to every man and woman on the street was actually something that made me feel really passionate, because I want people to have access to this stuff. And since then, it's gone on in many ways, in many directions. And I think it's only when I come on things like podcasts and chat, and I realize it's only been 7 years since Ross has died. And actually, a lot of stuff has happened in that time, a lot of shifts and a lot of changes. But there's not ever a simple way to explain how I got from A to B. It's been a journey. I've
It's
lived
been a life
100
journey.
years.
Yeah. And I think confidence, like you said, so in those early years of your life when you were on, on front of camera and on stage, you have to have a certain level of confidence to be able to do that. But what I don't think people necessarily understand about confidence is it's not an all-round thing. You can be insanely confident to stand up and sing in front of 1,000 people or go out on national telly, but you can actually then be completely unconfident and, in how you look or other areas of your life. And people will look at people like you when you were on Bike of Growth, which was a classic, by the way. I absolutely loved it.
People have such fond memories. It's so lovely.
It was amazing. I can remember the song in my head as we talk. But people can look at Bike of Grove cast and think, God, you're just so confident. I could never do the things that you're doing. And they don't realize that you are humans and there's so many other things going on for you. And I think it's the same for entrepreneurs. I think, I had an event, ran an event this week, and I get a group of, business owners and entrepreneurs together. I'm there on stage and doing my thing, and they think that I am this hugely confident person. But I still have the self-doubts, and that I'm still it's a journey for everybody, and I don't think you can ever, there's not an end to that journey, is there?
There's no certificate that you will get. And I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said, when I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
That's the key component part, right? When we are doing our thing, whatever that is, because it will be different to everybody, you can be really confident in that space because it's your thing, right?
Yeah.
This is what I say to my kids. I'm like, you don't have to be good at everything. You just have to find something you really love and go for that. And that's how confidence develops, right? if you can be good at one thing and you feel like I'm doing my thing, I'm on that stage, I'm networking, I'm promoting my business, I'm doing the thing that I feel passionate about, regardless of what it is, it actually teaches our brain that maybe I could do this other thing. It allows us to feel that maybe we could stretch ourselves out of our comfort zone. When we don't have a thing and when we don't feel like we can't find something that we feel passionate about, and there's lots of reasons for that, lots of limiting beliefs, lots of past stuff that's happened that maybe got us to that place. And it's often certainly when I end up working with people because they've got to that point and they're like, I don't feel good. And I've just done what everybody else wanted me to do for years and years, and I haven't found my thing. That's where lack of confidence breeds. We can find one thing, two things that we just think, I'm all right at this, or I feel confident in this one area. It gives us some kind of springboard to think, well, actually, maybe if I'm confident here, maybe I could do this and maybe I'd be all right there. And it's not about competence straight away, because we literally can't be competent at something straight away. We're going to be shit at it first, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, perfectionists can just, you're going to have to recognize you're going to be rubbish first. That's okay. You might have a certain level of natural ability or leanings towards certain things, but you're still going to have to learn. And if you get stuck in that perfectionist mode of it's got to be perfect or it's not good enough at all, then you won't move. That's not a growth mindset. And confidence and self-belief, it really only comes from being uncomfortable and being uncomfortable over and over again until you feel a little bit less comfortable, or maybe you never feel less comfortable, but you learn that you can cope with not being comfortable.
Yeah.
As you rightly said, people will see you on stages or you'll see me do my thing, and they will think that I'm absolutely, it's easy breezy all the time. And I'm going to tell you that's just nonsense. Every time I stand on stage, every time I do a thing, yes, I've become competent in certain areas and I have my fallback points I can talk about, or I have a level of trust in my ability that something will come out of my mouth. But I bring fear to fear comes with me. It's not, I don't get to leave fear or doubt or anxiety at home. It comes with me. But I've learned to put my arm around fear and anxiety and know I don't die of it. I just feel uncomfortable, and we'll be all right. We'll be all right, won't we?
Always. And I absolutely love, honestly, everything you've just said, because this is what I say all the time to my clients. Like, you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the only way that any of us are ever going to grow and our businesses are going to grow is if we are constantly just nudging the boundaries of our comfort zone. Because if we stay there, it sort of feeds the fear of failure and all of those things. And if we just start nudging the boundaries, if you try and take a huge leap, then that's where the fear can overtake you and you won't succeed then. But if you just try, I remember when I did my first ever public speaking, and it was so overwhelming. The physical reaction I had to it, the nerves, it took every ounce of me to walk out onto that stage. And it wasn't perfect. Like you say, it's never going to be. But what does happen is every single time that you take that step and you survive it, you then realize, okay, I'm going to feel all of those feels, but I also know that it's going to be okay. And that's where the confidence comes, isn't it? It's not necessarily confidence in doing that thing in the beginning, but it's confidence in knowing that you'll survive it.
Absolutely that. Like my core belief is that I will find a way. And when I believe that I will find a way, that's trust. And when we think about self-confidence, the word confidence comes from a Latin word, which I'm going to butcher because I don't know how to say it. But anyway, I think it's fidere or fidere. Someone who went to private school and speaks Latin will be able to tell me I'm saying it wrong. But essentially, the word itself means to trust. So when we say self-confidence, we're talking about self-trust. And that's that's that core belief. If I can trust that I will work it out, I will find a way, then I'll find a way. And if I keep affirming that to my brain, then my brain knows even on those times when we mess up, we fail, it doesn't go how we wanted to, we're cringing, we've said something stupid, we've messed up, we've had to pivot, we've had to quit, all of those things. When that happens, if I can trust, okay, I'm going to have a breather, I'm going to have a cry, I'm going to have a cup of tea, and then I'm going to find a way. And it might take longer than I'd hoped, or, that thing didn't work and I thought it was going to, and I spent loads of time on it. All the things that we do in business, But if I can go, I'll be all right, I'll find a way, that's the trust that will get you through to that next thing, whatever that is. And that's something that we simply have to have in business, because there's going to be rocky moments in it, always. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're Richard Branson. You will have those moments where you have to shift and move and pivot, and you'll mess up. It's okay. You'll survive.
That's the thing. And that's the difference. I think it all comes down to the mindset, where you look at the hugely successful people and they have just as many trip ups and failures as smaller entrepreneurs do, but they just handle it differently. They just don't see it as a negative.
Yeah.
They see it as, progression, learnings, moving forward. We've tried that. We know that didn't work. So let's find another way, like you said.
Experiment, isn't it? It's more like being a scientist. It's more like being a detective of your own world and
Yeah,
working
exactly.
your route through it and thinking, okay, that one didn't work. So what would work? And
Mm.
I've often, people will often ask me about resilience, and maybe they do the same with you as well. When people know you've been through big stuff, or, even the stuff they don't know, they know you're an adult human who's been through some stuff. People often ask about resilience. And I've always had this kind of, it's funny, I don't know where it came from, this whole kind of feeling of that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And that feeling of like, I know, and I felt this when I was acting as well, I know I will keep going longer. I will work harder. When everybody else has given up, I will still be going. So I literally can't fail. And
Yeah.
that's the mindset that will get me through. There's a quote by, why is his name gone out of my head? Alex Ferguson, ex-Man United manager, right? Hugely successful. And even if you don't know football, years and years of successes with Man United at the time.
Yeah.
There's a quote from him where he talks about failure. And I just love it. I think it's just genius. And he said, Man United never lost a game. Sometimes we just ran out of time. Oh,
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
so good. Like that, if you can cultivate that mindset, you're never a loser. You never lost. Sometimes you just ran out of time. That time they ran out of time, but they didn't lose because they were winners.
That is like mind blowing. But it's so simple
Yeah.
that's like such an easy way to look at things. And I think it is so often just about reframing, and how we speak to ourselves internally is often so negative. Like, we would never speak to our worst enemy the way that we often speak to ourselves. And it's so ingrained in us through societal conditioning, or, through our past, that we don't even notice that we're doing it anymore.
Yeah, stories and words. Words are everything. Like I've often described myself as, in all of my work, whatever form it takes, whether that's acting, singing, dancing, self-development, writing, I'm a storyteller. And the thing with our own lives is we do get to tell a better story. Sometimes we're telling a really shit story to ourselves, and that's where we become stuck. And none of us are, immune to this. Not even when you know it. I'm not immune to this. And the minute, and lots of your listeners will be in that space right now, the minute we find ourselves in that negativity spiral, it's something you're telling yourself. It's a story. There's a story there. Now, that doesn't mean that shit stuff isn't there. Like, we're not about toxic positivity. I'm not saying like everything is fine, nothing bad ever happens, good vibes only. Like, I'm not saying that. Like, I'm saying, yes, sometimes really shit, painful, traumatic stuff happens. And we're not avoiding that. We will look at that and go, that is unfair and cruel. And I wish that hadn't happened. And I wish that wasn't happening, right? We're not acknowledging that. But what's around that shit thing is a ton of good. And that's all we can do in terms of reframing. When my husband was dying and we were in the hospice, he was in the hospice for about a month. And I was literally watching him die. I was watching him then go, he was like asleep, and then I'm watching him starve. Like, you're watching the circle of life. I've been at births, I've been at a death, and it was very humbling. And again, it highlighted to me the importance of life, because Ross was such a big character. But as he was there dying, I wasn't looking at Ross dying and going, well, that's a gift. Of course I wasn't. I was going, that's so sad. My best friend is dying. I wish he wasn't dying. I'm devastated. But what I was doing to support myself was going, I see that. I feel it. I accept what is happening. I'm not trying to fight what is literally happening in front of me and I have no control over, because that would add pain.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm also going to do is I'm going to give my brain and my heart some respite by going, what else is there around this painful thing that is good? And there was the fact he was in a hospice. There was the fact that we had our children. There was the fact that financially we were in a fairly good position because we'd made hay while the sun shone. We had amazing support network around us in terms of family and friends. And also the wider public were reaching out in droves. Like, there was so much love, so much support. I was also very aware, and really that's how my work came about in terms of the Happy Me project. I was aware of the platform that I had and the impact that I could make by taking something really painful and going, well, let's make some good come out of this, because I ain't the only person going through this. I'm not
Yeah.
the first person who's become a widow at 32. I'm not. And so I began to talk about Ross and us and what was going on, knowing that there was going to be some good that will come off the back of that. And that's the key, whether it's in business or our life. When something shit happens, we don't avoid it. We allow ourselves to feel. We're allowed to cry, and we're allowed to find it hard and frustrating and unfair, because it is, right? Some
Yeah.
stuff is just on paper shit. But then we go, okay, I support myself by going, where's the good around this? Where's the lessons that I'm going to learn from this? And not in a judgmental way. And that's the difference when we think about the storytelling. My story there, when Ross first died as a widow, right? A word I didn't connect with. In that moment, I know people would have allowed me to just give up, crawl in a ball and go, that's it now. This is you
Yeah.
now. This is sad. Like, put on that black veil and, that's it, isn't it for you? And that sounded like a shit story to me. And I was not willing to accept that as a story. That didn't mean I was stoic. That didn't mean that I didn't find it hard and haven't found it hard and don't find it hard. It just means that I went, okay, I'm going to look at Ross's death and realize that if he's dead, then I know nothing about the world, because that the world where Ross was alive made sense, and now it doesn't. So I'll become a student. I'll be open to learning, and I'm going to really honor Ross's life by living as fully as I can and being brave. All of the things that you said earlier about being brave and stretching yourself, and that's terrifying, but it really comes down to the words that we're saying. When people ask me if I was okay, how I was, how are you, cocking their heads to the side and all that when Ross died, I didn't bullshit and say, I'm really great, I'm fine. I didn't say that, because that would have felt lies. But what I did say, because I wanted to give my own brain a way through this, I would say, I'm okay, I'll be better.
Yeah.
And that was enough. It wasn't lies, because I was okay. In that particular moment, I was okay because I was talking to them. I'm okay, I'll be better. And that's what I worked on, because it will get better, but we have to let our brain know that that's what we're looking for. Because then
Yeah.
our brain will look for a route. It will find its way through that. It will look for something that's joyful to support you. If we keep saying, people will say things like it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare is like, that's to me, like, my mum says it a lot. She uses lots of like potent words like that. She'll say it's a nightmare. And then you'll get to what the thing is, and it'll be something so trivial. And I'll think, why have you created such a drama in your own head? You phoned me and said you'd had a nightmare, and it was just that your post had gone next door. And it wasn't really a nightmare, was it? It was like a
Yeah.
slight, pain in the arse. Like,
Inconvenience.
it was a slight inconvenience, not a nightmare. A nightmare to me is like a nightmare, like hell, like
Yeah.
torture, abuse, pain, like that's a nightmare. So when someone says it's a nightmare about the fact that their live stream that they did on Facebook went really badly, but it's not a nightmare, is it? It's a bit, it's a moment of embarrassment. No one cares, really. So
Yeah.
words matter. Like, I can't stress that. That's so, so important. I can't stress that enough. Find a better way of telling your story. Even if on paper you think, right, I went bankrupt. Let's think of something I went bankrupt and lost my house, right? That sounds a shit, terrible story. It's awful to go through that. But maybe you can go, I found a way that really didn't work, and I'm going to find my route out. And the next stage is going to be phenomenal. The next chapter is going to be my bounce back era is going to be so good. You watch how good it's going to be. That we got to find a way to tell a better story.
Yeah. And I think labels are a massive part of that as well. So you're saying there, the word widow just didn't sit with you. And really, that is a label.
Yeah.
And there's so many others, that we can tell ourselves. In part of those stories is we'll label ourselves as, oh, I'm a bad public speaker. I had one
Yeah.
slightly bad experience once when I forgot my lines or whatever it is. Therefore, I am a bad public speaker. Well,
Yeah.
you're shutting that off, that
Mm.
opportunity off you for the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
it's about rethinking about these words and labels that we put on ourselves that are holding us back in so many different areas, and then just reframing them or scrapping them all together.
And as well,
Um,
some of those names that people that call themselves are not names that they originally gave themselves. It may
mm,
have come from somebody else. And I think what often happens is we hear it and then we want to protect ourselves. Our brain wants to protect us. So we do that whole self-deprecating thing where we think if I say it first and nobody can touch
yeah,
me, right? And we do that thing of doing that. And then it becomes, we essentially, we take the baton from whoever said it in the first place, which, that person was probably a dickhead. Let's just be real here, right? They said something shit that made you feel bad about it, or it was just a misplaced comment that you took to heart in that moment. You take the baton from them and you just beat yourself with it.
yeah,
And that person's gone on their merry way, not ever thinking about that comment again. And you've held it dear, like it said something about you. It didn't. You had a moment, as you say, the public speaking one's a huge one. It's a public speaking is a whole chapter in my new book, Find Your Confidence. And the reason being is because so many people in my world have, certainly as an actor, it's not something that I would tell myself. Although
mm,
strangely enough, I did used to say, and I was going to say I didn't ever say that, but I kind of did because I used to say, oh, I would never do public speaking, which is so weird as an actor
yeah.
because as an actor, I was playing a part. I didn't ever imagine I would be doing it as me, as
As
Holly.
Blue Matthews, yeah.
I didn't ever think that. I just thought, well, I won't be doing that. I'll be doing it as a character.
Mm,
And so actually, that's not strictly true because I did used to say that. And that was limiting me. Of course, I'm going to be fucking good at public speaking. I've been speaking on stages since I was a child. I'm not going to be good at that. But I didn't identify with it because, I just was like, well, that's somebody else's thing. But we
mm,
do it so often in business. I'm not good at writing, or I'm not good at this, or I'm not creative. I hear people say I'm not creative all the time. Okay, so you're not good at art, as in drawing. That's what you're telling me. That doesn't mean you're not creative.
yeah,
Creativity comes in many forms. I mean, even people who are scientists or mathematicians, I think it takes a level of creativity to come up with the formulas and the things that, create. Science is definitely creative. You've got to come up with
yeah,
creative ways to find an answer. So people will, as you say, they will label themselves and limit themselves. You get to decide, and there will be lots listening to this, and they'll be probably thinking, and maybe let's get them to think about that. Have a think in your life. Where do you feel stuck? What's the story around that? Who told you that was your story? What
mm,
label? What are you saying there? What is the limiting belief? What is the label that you are giving yourself around that? I'm not good at. People like me don't do that, don't they? I had one lady, and I always reference it because it really stuck with me. Lovely lady at one of my events years ago, at one of the early Happy Me Project events. We were talking about limiting beliefs, and I was getting them to do this exercise. And she raised her hand and she said, what do you do if the limiting belief isn't a belief, it's a fact? So I'm like, okay, please,
interesting,
I'm
yeah,
like, please continue, enlighten me. And she said, I'm a really sensitive person. I cry all the time, and sensitive people don't get on in business.
mm.
And
I
I'm
mean,
like, that is a belief. I said Steve Jobs cried all the time. That was what I heard, right? That's the rumors on the street. Steve Jobs was a crier, right?
yeah,
I think he did all right. And every time she told herself that story, and this is what I told her, every time you tell yourself sensitive people can't do well in business, there's somebody else crying all the way to the bank. So stop telling yourself that story. I cry all the time. I'm all
I
right.
cry all the time. Honestly, I'm like, I cry at adverts. So this morning, so we're recording this right at the end of December in 24.
Yeah.
I know it's not going out for a couple of weeks, but I've just been at my daughter's carol singing concert this morning. Cried my eyes out.
Cried
I
your
cry all the time. But to me, that's not a negative thing at
oh,
all. That's a positive thing. It's a power that I am emotive and I can
great.
connect with people on that deeper level. So, but it's like you say, she's just been telling herself, and the fact that she said it's a fact.
Yeah.
Well, who has ever told you that it's a
Yeah.
fact? Like, where has that story come from in your mind?
Yeah.
Honestly. But this is the thing. So in the beginning, this is the bit that I struggled with. when I started on this sort of self-development journey, I was like, okay, I get this. I get that I'm telling myself these negative stories and I'm putting these negative labels on myself. What now? So I can see that that's a negative story, but how do I change that? What am I supposed to do? And I think people, and this is why potentially when you started the Happy Me project and you broke it down into such a simple,
Yeah.
easy way for people to understand, people make it into a much bigger thing and then again tell themselves a negative story. Well, I can't change my
Yeah.
story. But
Well, it's a
so
bit
much
what
of
you
it.
said there when you said about, not making too big a leap so that you scare yourself back into retreat. I think
Yeah.
part of it, and this is why all of my work is very much the whole thing around it is self-compassion and
Mm,
knowing that we're going to find this stuff hard. It's scary to step out of your comfort zone. It's scary to try something new. It's even scary to unpick why you believe this stuff because better the devil you know, right? I'm
yeah.
comfortable calling myself names. It's easy to be horrible to ourselves.
I've done it
And
for many years.
I've done it for so long. I know what that's
Yeah.
like. And actually, let's be really real here. If we keep telling ourselves that story, if we keep berating ourselves, we also, and this is the flip side of it, and subconsciously, if I say to myself, people like me can't do this, then guess what? I don't have to do anything. I don't have to take action because I've already laid the groundwork down. No, people can't, I don't have to do anything. But if
Yeah.
I say I'm going to find a way, then I have to do something. I have to get uncomfortable. And that's sometimes the truth of it. Sometimes we allow ourselves, and no, it's not conscious, it's subconscious. We allow ourselves to stay stuck in that story because if we don't, if we let go of the story, we have to do something. And that's way scarier.
Yeah.
I get to sit here going, I'm just ugly and disgusting and I can't do anything and I'm shit at everything. Then I get to stay in my blanket there. I mean, miserable because I'm in this comfy blanket and it's not that comfy anymore. But I don't have to do anything. Whereas the minute I go, okay, I'm ready to try something, I have to feel uncomfortable. And maybe I do have days when I fail or I cry or I feel embarrassed and I blush and I mess up or say the wrong thing. And that's the reality. So it is about unpicking. And the first step is recognizing that there's a story, right? So
Mhm.
I would say any area in somebody's life where you feel stuck and you'll know instantly when we're talking, you know where it is. It's either it's the way you look, it's in your social life, it's your relationship, in your work, it'll be certain areas of the work. Maybe you can go, I'm really good here, but over here, nope, people like me don't do that. I've never been good at that. I was told in year 6 at school that I was never good at maths. I would never be able to, I'm not a businesswoman. Whatever the story is that you're telling yourself, I want the listeners to think about what that is and then listen to the words that say around it. Listen to what the stories are around it. And you might even over the next few weeks start to recognize, oh, I do say that. Oh, I
Mm.
do think that in my head. I do think I could never do that. It's easier. Another one is that it's easier for them.
Yeah.
If you see yourself saying that, just recognize, okay, so if it's easier for them, why can't I do it? What's the story attached to that? Why I can't do it? It's easier for them. You know how many times I've heard it's easier for me? I promise you it's not. It's not easier. People go, it's much easier. You've had, you've been an actress, so it's easier. Is it? Why? For what reason? Anytime we're moving, you think it wasn't hard for me to, move from being an actor into the world of self-development? You
Mm.
think it was hard? You think it was easy for me to identify as a businesswoman? No, it was not because
Yeah.
I didn't have a degree in business. I don't have a degree. So in my mind, well, who am I? Those people have got degrees. I definitely had to move through that. I definitely had to let go of that story. And it still gets triggered. And all of our stories will still get triggered. It's like whack-a-mole, right? You'll pull out a weed and something else will spring up and you're like, oh, shit, we'll get that one out again. They pop up. So these limiting beliefs, as you said at the beginning, it's not like you suddenly get a certificate that says, I'm done with all of my limiting beliefs. Here is my certificate. I've passed self-development. I've completed it. You don't
Wouldn't that
get
be a
that,
dream?
wouldn't it? I certainly think some of my clients sometimes think that they're going to go through one thing and they're going to get to the end and be like, I never have to work on this again.
I
That'd be
wish.
nice. It would be
Yeah.
delicious, wouldn't it? But it doesn't happen. And we still have to recognize what those beliefs, though they're pervasive, right? They do spring back up and you have to go, oh, okay, that's probably that same old story. I didn't know it was still there, but it is. And we
Mm.
do a little bit more work on it. But we always do it with a gentleness to ourselves because we recognize, this is at some point, this story probably served me. It
Yeah.
probably helped me. Like, if if I was scared or somebody called me a name or I didn't, and I said, oh, well, I don't do that anymore. It served me in that moment because I didn't have to feel fear or pain or embarrassment anymore. It doesn't serve us long term, but at some point, a version of us needed us to just do that. Or it's all we had in our locker at the time.
Mm.
And then we learn more and then we try something else. And, I think it's bit by bit. But once you recognize there's a story and you have a desire to, I don't want to feel scared to do public speaking because I think it could help my business, or I don't want to feel scared with numbers, or I feel scared to go on a live stream or to write. I don't want to feel scared just because my old English teacher told me I was shit at writing to write a post on social media. Or I don't want to be bothered about posting because of a girl I went to school with might be watching. I want to work on that. Okay, then great. Then that's the first step. And then you start to learn, whether it's working with a coach, whether it's reading some books, watching some, doing a course, you just start to learn. But you also have to, along the way, be kind enough to yourself to know that along the way, I'm going to find this really hard. And there's going to be some moments where I stumble. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to be really gentle with myself and know that's okay. It's part of the dance. It's part of growing.
Yeah. And I think what can happen is when you start to switch on and listen to how you speak, you can actually be really surprised how many times you telling yourself that, that I'm not the type of person that does that. For instance, that's a really common one that we will all say for different scenarios in our lives. But one thing I always say is, if you say, I could never do that, just adding the word yet on the end
It's
is
lovely.
so transformational, because if you say I could never do that, that is closing off that opportunity forever. It's just done. That's not something that will ever be in your life. But if you just say yet, and it's so easy to add that on and then be aware of that, that's saying, okay, today I'm not that type of person. Today I'm not going to get up on stage and public speak, or whatever it might be for you. But it opens up those opportunities. It starts your brain's going, oh, well, maybe today's the day. And it starts showing you those opportunities. And it's just making tiny little changes like that in the beginning, because suddenly saying, from I could never public speak to I am a public speaker can feel like that huge leap that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So just using that tiny 3-letter word.
And it means
can
you don't
really,
have to, because the thing is, you will still say it because it's habitual.
Yeah.
So I often say to people, you can correct in the moment. You will hear yourself say it. One of the things I caught myself saying recently, and again, this is, we're all a work in progress always, and none of us are, able to avoid it. I realized that I was calling myself an idiot a lot. I was saying in really menial things, right? And there's lots of things that I know logically are associated to ADHD and the fact that I go at a pace that is fast and I make mistakes sometimes and I fall over, I break a lot of things. Like I know I'm a tornado of a human. And even though logically I know why that's happening, I'm actually compassionate enough to recognize the reasons behind that. And I've done a lot of work there. Still found myself going, fucking idiot, you idiot, in my head. And then I caught myself doing it. I was like, oh shit, like that's really horrible. If I heard, if we think about somebody that we love, if I heard somebody call my daughters an idiot in the street, it would not bode well for them. Like I'd be fuming. So why am I doing that to myself? But I know that it's still going to happen for a little bit while I'm working on that. So instead of that, a bit like you with the yet, adding on to it, in that moment when I hear it, oh, you just called yourself an idiot. Let's change it to something better. Now, it doesn't have to be you're the most wonderful person that's ever walked this planet, because that would be too big a jump. But it might be that I just say, you've made a mistake in this moment. You had a fuck up, but we'll work it out, right?
Yeah.
Rather than it being saying something about me as a person. So we can stop in the moment, we can delete and we can edit it. That's it. And we get better at that. And I think, in my new book, Find Your Confidence, I've given loads of activities in that book around that, around the way we speak about ourselves, our self-belief, and simple things like that. They become the framework that we use. So rather than thinking, I'm going to never have to deal with this again, having tools that we start to use that we get better at. So I'm now better at spotting if I'm feeling a bit horrible in myself, I'm overwhelmed or something. I stop and I go, right, what's going on here? Like, what are you telling yourself? What have you missed out on? Have you just not had any water all day? You've not been outside? you're missing all the basics out. Like, what's happening? Checking in with yourself can be something that can be a really nice habit, or something that you remind yourself of, because, habits aren't always easy to come by, but notes to yourself to say, have you had any water? Have you checked in with yourself? Things like that can be tools that we can learn, that whatever is going on for us, that we can use that framework. But I think that in that moment thing of yet, or I can't do that thing yet, or just finding something better to say, that's a really lovely tool that we can start today. And anyone that's listening, you'll notice, because Claire and I have been chatting about words, you will notice yourself saying something horrible. And instead of just allowing that to just run free, just take a moment and think of what would be a better thing to say to myself here. What would be a compassionate version of this rather than this? Because this is not nice. That's not helping me. And let's be really real. Nobody's ever bullied themselves or shamed themselves into doing anything.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, if we could do that, my house would be tidy and I'd be good at maths. So, and it's not, and I'm not. So, if we could just shame ourselves, people think, oh, if I call myself fat and ugly, I'm going to go to the gym. No, you're not. You're going to sit there and cry and eat cake. That's not going to make you go to the gym. So it's just not going to happen.
It's all about, like we said, just, reframing and just starting to love yourself a little bit more, be kinder to yourself. Wow. So for me, when I was starting this journey, like I said, when I started to listen and hear the negative things that I was saying, it felt like too big a leap for me in the beginning to reframe it. So for me, the first step I could take was adding the yet onto the end of it. And that really helped me. And then soon, you do progress, and you can move up a level, I suppose, in your self-care. And then I was like, okay, well, I've graduated from that side now, and things are working and I can see the benefit.
Yeah.
So now let's try reframing it entirely. So stop saying the word I can't and I don't and I'm not that person. And reframe it entirely. But it did take, I couldn't do that straight away. I needed that first step. So it is a journey and everybody will deal with it differently. But it is just about becoming aware and being kinder to yourself overall.
100%. And I think another little tool that people can do is that, because we've got to train our brains, we've got to get our brains on board, adding on to what you just said there, another really way to teach your brain you can is in moments when something goes well, being very, very cognizant and aware of it. So I will, for example, because I want to have a nice life, like I want my brain to work in my favor. I want my brain to seek out joy and opportunity and good things. And I want to tell my brain the world is good. It's not all bad. And so when something good happens, and it might be as simple as I've had a really good cup of tea. That was a delicious cup of tea that I made. I can say to myself in that moment, life is really good. I'm so good at making cups of tea. I'm so good at that.
I'm going to come around for a cup of tea.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm so good at that. And it sounds really trivial to say that, but actually, our life happens in the tiny moments. It's not the big picture that we've decided. Our life is happening now in this moment.
All those little glimmers throughout the day.
It's those. And so if we can really be aware of that, and, anytime I find a penny on the floor, I will always pick up the penny. I don't care how dirty it is. I wash my hands after. I will pick up that and I will say, money comes so easily to me. It's so easy for me to make money. It's so easy. It just flows to me, right? And that might seem such a silly woo-woo-y thing to say. But what I'm saying to my brain is, don't get stuck in an idea that we can't have. If you're asking for whether it's money or success, anytime something comes up where there's an opportunity, I can think, oh, I'm so good at attracting opportunities to me. I'm amazing at that. Congratulate yourself for the most silly things. When we were little kids, we used to get clapped for going to the toilet, right? Why is no one clapping anymore for that? No one's clapping me when I go to the toilet. No one's bothered. We got to clap for ourselves in silly. I made tea for all the family and everybody whinged at me. I'm a legend. What a legend. What a dinner making legend. I've managed to go for a walk today. I'm so good at exercise. We need to crank up the cheerleading. Because when we do that, our brain can't really argue with that. If we have a tiny success, like I've managed to tee up all of my social media for the week, I've managed to schedule it all. I'm a scheduling legend, right? I'm so good at scheduling my work. It comes so easy. I'm so successful in my business. Those little things, when we tell ourselves that, when we tell our brain that, it can't argue in that moment because you just did something. So it's like, oh yeah, fair enough. fair enough then. You know, we're negotiating with our own brains. But when we do that all the time, eventually our brain isn't arguing in the same way because you're kind of giving it reason to believe that belief about you. And when we're going back to those limiting beliefs, we're kind of just nudging it, like you said, and then maybe we can get to, I'm good in this area in my business.
Yeah.
I'm getting better. That's another one that's a nice thing to do. Any kind of affirmations or beliefs that are kind of growth type of things. So every time I do a live, you might say, every time I do a live, I get better at doing a live stream. Every time I speak on stage, I'm getting better and better at speaking on stage. We can kind of not argue that one. It's easier to get on board with it, isn't it, than saying, I'm an amazing public speaker.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's proving that, it's giving tangible evidence, which actually quite often a lot of people do need. They need to see the evidence. But then, like you said earlier, so often actually we switch our brains off to the positive. So we only search for the negatives, which, you know, that's what we need to change. But one thing I want to mention here, in exactly what you were just saying, is that actually we can gift confidence to people as well. And have you ever, because I know it's happened to me, where somebody's complimented, you know, oh, that dress looks really lovely on you. And then suddenly, every single time you put that dress on, you'll feel amazing. Like, it doesn't matter how many years or months it's been since that one person, potentially a complete stranger, told you that they liked your dress. So when we're talking about being kind to ourselves and reframing how we speak to ourselves, it can go the other way as well. And we should be gifting it as much as we possibly can.
It
So
matters so much who we are around as well. We know that, you know, especially in business and in life, but it really matters. And there's actually there's a phenomenon, I guess they call it the Michelangelo effect. I don't know if you've heard of that. But the Michelangelo effect is essentially like that's my version of the Michelangelo, like, you know, the what's the word? The artist, right? The idea, the sculpt, is that what's the word I'm looking for? Sculptor, artist. Anyway, the point being that if you are around, and they did studies on it, was mostly on relationships in a couple, but it scales out to friendships or social circles and all that. People we are around a lot. If that person believes in us and they really like us, when we are around them and we're hearing those compliments and we're seeing through how they see us through their eyes, they essentially sculpt us into believing in ourselves. And there was a ton of research done on this, to call it the Michelangelo effect. And so this is why it's so important to be around people that believe in you and that believe in you essentially. And then you start to believe in yourself. You can kind of by proxy start to believe in yourself. You know, I often say to my clients, hang around with me long enough and you will start to believe in yourself.
You'll see what I see.
You'll see what I see, because exactly that, you know, being that cheerleader for other people.
Yeah, because we're all stuck in fight or flight mode, aren't we? It's a safety mechanism from many millions of years ago that we are only ever looking for the negatives and then assessing whether we need to run away or not. So our brains are switched off to the positives because it's not a threat. We don't need to worry about it. So by celebrating other people's small wins for them and with them and highlighting them to them is how we can then help them and each other see those glimmers each day. You know, if someone if I came out to yours, Holly, and you made me an excellent cup of tea, I'd tell you, I'd say, this is, a cracker.
I'd be happy.
And
I'd be very happy. I would be like, fantastic. Like and that's, you know, I talk about cups of tea a lot because being a British person, we do like our tea.
We do drink a tea, yeah.
And one of the things, and I was actually talking about this on Lorraine not long ago because I was using it as an example. A lot of the time in life, we don't ask for the things that we want. And, you know, that often comes from lack of confidence. It comes from a fear. You know, in our business, we sometimes don't even want to own the fact that we have these big goals, these big ambitions, because we're so scared that we won't get what we want. And we don't want to fuss. We don't want to make a fuss. We don't want to bother anyone. We don't want to, we worry we're going to put people out. And I always use a cup of tea as an example because often if someone comes to my house, right, and I say, do you want a cup of tea? And they say, yeah. And then I say, how do you have your cup of tea? And they say, however it comes, or something along that. I'm not bothered, however it comes. I know that they likely accept all of their life, however it comes, and they don't ask for what they want. When you come around to my house, I would love it if you said to me, right, I would love, this is how I have my cup of tea. I have no milk in my cup of tea, whack a tea bag in it, just leave the tea bag in so it's stewing, so it's black. If there's a choice, I'd go for a fine bone china white cup. That would be my preference. I'm not going to say that in somebody's house. I'll say, what cups you got? Let me have a look at them. And but if someone's in my house, I'll offer you, do you like a big mug? Do you like a little teacup? You know, do you like a colour? Do you prefer like a black mug? Do you like a white one? Like, what would you like? Now, that might seem like a lot of questions. And for some people, I can see their discomfort in it. But I want them to have a good cup of tea that they like. And my version, I mean, I know that mine's quite an extreme version of a cup of tea, right? A black cup of tea, no milk in it. A lot of people are not liking that. If you say to me, however it comes, and I hand you that, are you going to be happy with that? Probably not.
No, I'm
I
a
mean,
bit more stubborn than you, so
how do you have your cup of tea? I
have
mean,
it strong, so squeeze all the tea out, but then
yeah,
quite milky to
yeah.
soften it.
You want taste like tea. So
Yeah.
now I know that you come round, I can make you that cup of tea. We can choose your cup, but I know that you're going to be happy with what you've got, and you've chosen that. You're empowered enough to say, I want it like this. Now, is a cup of tea, no one's dying over that, right? It's just a cup of tea. But if we think about our lives and our businesses, we often aren't asking for those things. And that
Yeah.
comes down to that, lack of assertiveness and confidence and not wanting to ask. And some of that, under the surface is all that people pleasing, all that worry. What if I don't fit in? What if they don't like me? What if I get pushed out the group? What if I end up dead in a ditch because of all of that? I mean, it's extreme, but like you said, our brains are wired to survive, not to thrive. Our
Yeah.
brain is wired just to keep us breathing. So it's looking for all the danger. If I'm a good girl, if I'm a good boy, if I just sit and I just have however it comes, I'll do whatever I need to do. We think that's it is how we stay alive, I guess. Certainly not how we thrive. If we want to have a great business and a great life and we want to feel good, we've got to start speaking up and asking for what we want, even when we're uncomfortable. When I first said I wanted to write a book, my first book, The Happy Me Project, came out a few years ago in 2022. When did it come out? 2022. When I sat in this kitchen I'm in now, and I wrote down, one of my friends is in market, and he was like, right, what do you want? Like, how do you want this to look? And I was like, well, I want to be the number one go-to self-development person in the world. And I want Happy Me TV. I want to impact massively. I want to, this was at the top. Okay, how do I do that? I'm like, right, okay, so I need to create credibility. I need to show that I'm an expert in what I do. One of the things on that branch down was I want to write a book, and I want that book to be with one of the biggest publishers in the UK. I want it that way. There's lots of routes to that, but that was one of the things. When I wrote that down, I thought I was so scared to write it down. I was so scared because the minute I wrote it down and said it, oh, that's embarrassing. What if I fail? What if I can't get it in one of the biggest public? What if I can't do it? How embarrassing. Like, all the doubt comes in. You've never written a book before. Who says you're any good at writing? What if it's, all of that stuff was there. But because I'd said it, and I thought, I'm just going to lean in, I'm just keep saying the things that I want. And then I said it on social media. And then it just so happens that an editor called Holly was following me on social media. I didn't know that she was following me. I had once messaged her before, and I think it was about public speaking, which is weird, weirdly enough. And she'd been doing something at work, and I'd given her a bit of advice on it. It was a private account, so it wasn't a publishing, it wasn't anything to do with their work. And I put out on social media, I'm writing a proposal for a book. I'm going to put it out there. This was back in, I want to say 2018, 2019 it was. And then she messaged me and she said, I work for Bloomsbury Publishing. Would you like to put a proposal to me? And I was like, Bloomsbury Publishing, like Harry Potter, Bloomsbury Publishing. I'm thinking, is it Bloomsbury? So I'm like, is this like a shady, like not the real version? Bloomsbury Red or something, you know what I mean? So I'm searching, I find out it is. I've panicked. I threw my phone across the room in a panic. Like, I'm going to have to put a proposal to Bloomsbury. I don't know what I'm doing, right? But that's how it started. And obviously, I then did get that publishing deal, and I've done 2 books with them now. That would not have happened had I not been brave enough. And I'm not special. I'm no different. All of the fear that we have to get through is the same for everybody at every level. Every single level is the same. We feel scared, and then we go, okay, I'll work it out. I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. It was bit by bit and kind of not even looking, because if I looked too far ahead, I'd have overwhelmed myself. That was too scary. I just thought, right, first step is, how do you write a proposal? Let's Google that.
Let's do that bit
Let's
first.
do that bit. Next bit, is there anyone that could help me do that? find some people that could maybe help me to do that. It wasn't like I didn't have all the answers. And I think that's another thing, you know, we said at the beginning, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Also, get comfortable knowing that you won't always have the answers straight away.
Yeah.
You won't. Sometimes you'll have an idea. I want to do a business on this. I've got this idea for a new, I want to write a book. I want to write a course. I want to do this. I'd love to do what they do. I don't know how to do it. And then just let go of the need to try and find the answer instantly. You probably won't have it. Otherwise, you'd be doing it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You've got to
But
take
also, let go of the fear and just approach the person and ask them. Because so often, you know, people say, oh, I could never message Holly or Claire and ask them how they got their first public speaking gig or whatever it is. Just message us. Like, there's so much fear around that cold reach out or asking for people's support. But actually, we're all here wanting to succeed. And especially you and I, we're here wanting everybody else to succeed as well.
Definitely.
So many of the opportunities that I've had, some of the best opportunities were literally because I sent an email completely out of the blue saying, I would love to do this. I'd love to support your audience or your space, your event, you know, would you be interested? It's just about starting that conversation.
100%. In Newcastle, we have a phrase you might have heard before, and it's shy bairns getting out. Right? Shy bairns getting out was what I grew up on, meaning, for those that don't know, bairns meaning kids. Right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't ask, you don't get. And I grew up on that. Like, that was like, we were told, if you don't ask, you don't get. Shy bairns getting out. You got to ask. And so I would ask. And I genuinely, like, when I first got that part on Biker Grove, it's because I asked. I wrote a letter to Biker Grove and I asked for a part. I've got that letter on a canvas. I've shared this loads of times before, but it was given to me on my 30th birthday. This canvas, it says, Dear D, who's the casting director, I would like a part on Biker Grove. My name is Holly. I'm an actress. I've got green eyes and brown hair, and I had done that in green and brown. And it was written in Comic Sans.
Of course it was.
And I know a designer dies every time we use that, but you know, it was fancy. I thought that was a fancy font and a sort of fun font. And so I wrote that letter. I said, I'm not shy one bit. I would like a part. And then at the bottom it said, P.S. please write back soon, because I was really keen to hear back from them. And they got me in for an audition because I asked for a part.
Yeah.
And I promise you now, that's exactly how I still do business. There's nothing more pretty than that. Like, I just asked. In fact, recently I did a podcast called the ADHD Chatter podcast, and it's had huge success. Probably even since then, it's grown and grown and grown. And a lot of people afterwards who were kind of in that space asked me, "How did you get on that podcast? That's huge." And I was like, I just messaged him and just said, "Oh, like, do you want me? Can I come on your podcast? I've got loads of stories." Like, and I'm well ADHD. Like, you know, like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the challenges with that. But it was amazing how many people afterwards went, "How did you get on that? What did you do? What was the process?" And I went, "I just asked." And I'm not saying you always get the first answer as a yes, by the way.
No.
Because you won't necessarily, but there might be another thing there. So many times people will message me and they will say, "I know you're probably not going to get this, or you're not going to hear this," or, you know, and I don't always see it, by the way. That is true, you know, social media and all that. And sometimes I forget I've seen it, and, you know, that's life. But just because somebody approaches me and maybe they don't have the same audience, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a no. There could be lots of reasons why it's a yes. It could be just a good day. It could be that, you know, I want to get into an audience that they might have, or there's loads of reasons why you might want to do something. And I would really encourage people to just ask, or speak about, more than anything, speak about the things that you want. You know, if we're talking about training our brain, talk about the things you want, not the things that you don't want. Because if you want your brain to find a route, then speak about it. Every time I've spoken about the things that I want, and I'm uncomfortable when I say it, I'm uncomfortable when I say I want Happy Me TV. I want it to be on a big platform like Netflix, or maybe Amazon, but probably one of the bigger sort of platforms like Netflix. I want it on there. And, like, that's uncomfortable because I don't know how to do that. So my brain's like, I don't know what I'm doing there. Our brain doesn't like not to have the answers. It's uncomfortable. And so But every time we say it, there might be somebody watching or listening, and you don't know how they can help you. But if you talk, some of the best things that have ever happened to me have happened because I've said to someone in a random conversation on the train, this is what I want. And they've went, actually, that's part of my job. How can I help you? You
Yeah.
don't know who
That's
it's
the
going to
thing. You just
support.
have no idea about these opportunities. And like, just to be clear to everyone listening, the only reason that Holly is sitting here with me today is because I messaged her.
Yeah.
So we had met, I think, I don't know, well, it was pre-COVID. You were
Yeah.
speaking at an event. So we'd met very briefly in person then, and we hadn't, I don't think, really communicated since then.
Yeah.
So it was basically out of the blue message, like, I love what you're doing. I think you'd be great for my audience. Would you consider it? And whether it's a good day or whatever the reason, there was a yes, and here we
Yeah.
are. So
So I'm here, and that's absolutely it. And so I really think it's such an important thing for people to remember. Stop assuming that people will say no.
yeah,
Start assuming that they will say yes, or they will, you just don't know. Like, I honestly, there's so many times when people will say to me, I just didn't think you would want me to be involved in that, or wouldn't. And I'm like, why? Like,
hmm
and I guess, it certainly is a level of confidence and self-belief. But how about we just lean into going, this is what I want to do. I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to be uncomfortable because my brain's going to go, oh, we don't know what that means or how to do that. And I'm going to be really vulnerable about that. There's something very, very warming and heartening about somebody going, I don't know what I'm doing, but I really want to do this. And I would
yeah,
love some guidance. And I think it's even nicer when you've seen somebody have some success in one area and then they're going, I really don't know about this area. Like, I
mhm,
recently, and this sounds wild to people, bear in mind we've talked loads about public speaking. Nearly every public speaking event that I've got has been somebody coming to me and saying, would you like to speak at my event? Right? So I kind of fell into public speaking. I knew I wanted to do a TED talk, and I got a TED talk because at every event that I did, my own events, I would do a vision board at the end, and I would take my own around and I would say, I want to do a TED talk on it. It so happened that at one of my events, a girl that was there, her brother was organizing a TED talk years after she came to my event. And she said, oh, I know someone in Newcastle who's from Newcastle. It was in Newcastle, who wants to do a TED talk. She'd be great. The TED event was called Life Finds a Way, right? I'm like, that's like, if I'm not there, that's outrageous.
right,
Literally my
yeah,
ethos. And I ended up getting it, but I got it because I spoke about it and I reached out and I asked the question. And so I'd forgotten where I was going with this. What was it called? Vulnerability. So the vulnerability to kind of ask that and to ask for things that you want. And public speaking was what I was saying. I've gone off on a tangent. I have to sometimes, when my brain goes off on a fast tangent, I have to recalibrate my brain to my mouth. Right.
take a moment and
Was
yeah,
my point was public
recenter.
speaking. So I've always kind of, other than the TED talk, which I got because I asked about it, it's kind of just come to me. And it was
Yeah,
really genuinely about a month ago when I thought, oh, I don't have any public speaking, strictly speaking, any events next year, anything in the diary. And then I thought, I really like doing public speaking. I really want to do more of it. But actually, I don't really know how to do that, which sounds ridiculous because people would assume because I do public speaking, I've been paid to do public speaking for years. Strictly speaking, other than, conversations and networking and then getting to know people and then put on an event and them asking me to speak at that event, I haven't cold approached anybody to
you've
do.
never had to lead
No.
it.
So it was a kind of realization, and I put it out and I thought, right, well, what can I do? And what can I control? Well, I can control maybe putting a show reel together. I can control making it more obvious on my website. And then because I talked about it, I had this week somebody who is a public speaker. I spoke at an event and we were both there. He reached out to me and said, look, I do loads of public speaking. That's really my thing. I know how to approach people for that. But I really want to put together courses, online courses and stuff. Why don't we have a sit down chat and we can help each other out? Now, that would not have happened. We haven't had that conversation yet, but that would not have even come up had I not said vulnerably, I've never actually approached anybody about this and I would like
Yeah.
to do more paid public speaking stuff. How can I make that happen? There's something endearing about us when we say, I'm not sure. I don't know how
But
to.
this is the thing, because unless we're honest with these things, we can be put on a pedestal by our audience and they can think that we have all of our shit together and we are like perfect. And none of us are, no matter, Steve Jobs, you mentioned earlier, no matter how high up you are on the chain, you still have situations that you aren't sure of, that you've never done before. So mine that I speak about quite often, Holly, is a TED Talk. So that is the one that I'm currently working
Right.
towards. Yeah.
Write the TED Talk, get it together, and just keep asking. And I have there's people that are putting TED Talks together. Approach them, tell them you want to do it.
Yeah.
Give them a title, whatever your talk is about, and just start approaching people. Like, there's a few people that I've kind of since realized who do the TED Talks, like regularly put things on, but go local area or around the UK and just approach it.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant thing to do. I mean, my TED Talk has been seen by, nearly, I think, 500,000 people now. And that's wild. And it's because it's such a credible thing, it's such a credible brand, people will look for it. Like, I look for talks all the time. Like, I will.
I do as well.
Yeah. So you'll be amazing. I'm excited for you to do it. It'll be a really exciting time for you. I was so nervous about my TED Talk.
Yeah, that'll be next level.
Purely because I wanted it so bad to go how I wanted it to go. And I'll tell you, I know we probably haven't got a lot of time left, but when I did my TED Talk, they said to me, a TED Talk, I think, is 18 minutes or something like that, strictly speaking. They have a very strict time for it. I had learned the letter. I had learned it upside down on my head. Like, I knew it to the timing, right? And on the morning, I'm going, and they said, can you knock 3 minutes off? And I stopped. Now, people pleaser would have went, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, right? And I thought, no. And I said, no. I said, I'll do it to the full. You can cut it. If you want to cut it down for your stuff, fine. I'm going to do it for TED Talk. I'm going to do it for the TED Talk, right? Not TEDx. Yep. I'm going to do it for TED so that they can use it on their website if they want to. And so I did. But because they decided to knock 3 minutes off the talks, they had in front of me on the stage, right, with 15 minutes on. And as it got to the end, it was flashing. Obviously, no one else can see this. So I'm like, in my head, like, thinking, don't speed up. Just do your talk.
Take your 3 minutes.
How you want to do it. Just do your talk. And I had done all the NLP anchoring and all of the stuff was there. And I knew it inside out. And I was so glad that I had that and I had practiced had I had, because then when I watched it, I'm like, yeah, it's how I wanted to do it. It's not my business what you do with it afterwards, but I wanted to do it to the time I'd done it in the way that I'd done it. And I was so pleased, but it was nerve wracking like that. Oh my God.
It's going to be, and I know it's going to be like probably the biggest.
It's going to be huge.
I've taken,
I'm excited for you. It's going to be brilliant.
Well, I will let you know once it's done, and congratulations on yours. So we do have to, honestly, I could speak to you for hours more. There's so many more questions I have for you, but for the listeners, I want to set a bit of homework for everyone. I want everybody to, that one person that they've been hoping to speak to, reach out to, I want you to go and do it this week. Stop feeling the fear, go and do it anyway, and just send that message or send that email, because you just don't know. I mean, we've both just proven you don't know what doors that will open for you.
My tip as well is keep it short and sweet. If anybody, I'm more than happy for your listeners to message me and give me their ask. I won't say yes to all of them. Do not send me a 3-page document. Bullet point me with 3 things. Give me an easy yes. Make it an easy yes for people. Don't make it a long, big spiel. They'll ask for more if they're interested, but keep it simple. And they're likely to go, go on then. If it's like, read this 10-page thing, no,
you've lost them at the beginning.
You've lost me, it's too much.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing. All right, Holly, thank you so much for joining me today. If people want to come and join your world and find out more about you, where is the best place for them to come and find you?
Absolutely. Well, head to imhollymatthews.com and you can get my book, Find Your Confidence, and my first book, The Happy Me Project, is on there. They can also join the Happy Me Project membership, which is my online self-development community. And I'm very, very in there. So if you want to be around and you want to really learn about your mind, and that is the space to hang out with me in there. But I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on all the social media. I'm hollymatthews.com. And do come and say hello, and do let me know that you've come from here. Tell me, who you've been contacting, what your big goal is, your big scary goal that you're scared of. And let's talk about the things that we've spoken about, because we can all help each other. You never know when somebody's going to be able to help you, or I'm going to be able to help you, or you're going to be able to help me. So let's reach out and create a lovely community, which I know you already have here, and just scale it out even more. And I look forward to meeting lots of your listeners.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll put all the links in the show notes for everyone as well. But yeah, Holly, just thank you so much. And to the listeners, thank you again for joining us this week. Please reach out to us and let us know, who you messaged and the outcome of that, how it went for you. And I will speak to you all next week.
Amazing.
I hope you have enjoyed today's episode, which was brought to you by Xero Accounting Software, a champion of small businesses and a proud sponsor of the Bold Blueprint podcast. If you're running a small business and you are dreaming big, then Xero is here to help make those dreams a reality. Xero is all about supporting entrepreneurs just like you, who are not just running businesses but are also changing the game. So whether you're just starting out or you're scaling up, join a global community of small businesses who trust Xero to manage their finances efficiently.